He's saying, let's keep Hamas in power.
So do you think he's pro-Hamas? Do you think he's pro? Do you think UN is kind of tilted towards Hamas?
Well, I'd ask you, if you're in favor of a ceasefire that keeps Hamas in power, when we're about to destroy Hamas, you're actually protecting them and keeping them alive.
Well, you might
here's the problem. Here's the problem. If you keep Hamas alive, if you keep Hamas in power, then you'll be interviewing me 6 months from now or a year from now. There'll be another Gaza war.
Israel's foreign minister has accused the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, of supporting Hamas. Eli Cohen said the UN leader was a danger to world peace. He was responding to Guterres invoking the rarely used Article 99 in the UN Charter to call for a ceasefire. Also, last night, money due to go to Israel from America was blocked by Congress. We can now talk to Mark Regev, who's a senior advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you think the UN is more pro-Hamas than it is pro-Israel?
Well, the Secretary General has made a mistake, a strategic mistake and a tactical mistake. First of all, from a tactical point of view, he already called for this sort of ceasefire a month ago, and had we agreed then, we would never have had the military pressure to get our hostages out. And we got over 100 hostages out precisely because we conditioned a ceasefire on the release of hostages. If Hamas could have got a ceasefire without releasing hostages, we wouldn't have got a single person home. None of those children, and you've seen the pictures, all those children that you saw, all the women, would still be in captivity.
That's the tactical mistake. What's the strategic mistake?
Well, the strategic mistake is obvious. He's saying, let's keep Hamas in power.
So do you think he's pro-Hamas? Do you think he's pro? Do you think UN is kind of tilted towards Hamas?
Well, I'd ask you, if you're in favor of a ceasefire that keeps Hamas in power, when we're about to destroy Hamas, you're actually protecting them and keeping them alive.
Well,
here's the problem. Here's the problem. If you keep Hamas alive, if you keep Hamas in power, then you'll be interviewing me 6 months from now or a year from now. There'll be another Gaza war. Because Hamas says openly they want a state of permanent war with Israel, that they would do the October 7th massacre with the beheadings, with the rapes, with the burning of people alive. They'd do that again and again and again. Their words, not mine. There is no peace with Hamas.
But they might not want to keep Hamas in power or alive. They might want to keep civilians alive, civilians in Gaza. And the problem you have, Mark Regev, and you must acknowledge this, is that whatever the justification, whatever the military intent, too many innocent civilians in Gaza are dying. And I wonder if do you accept the fact that at the minute you're killing 2 civilians for every Hamas fighter? That looks like the ratio at the minute of what is happening with the military operation in Gaza.
So as we've said before, we don't want to see a single civilian caught up in the crossfire between the Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas. That's not our goal. Our problem is that Hamas has deliberately used Gaza's civilians as a human shield for its military machine. It sees Gazan civilians as cannon fodder. And though we're trying to be as surgical as we can be, our task is made very difficult by this Hamas organization that builds its infrastructure, its military machine, under civilian neighborhoods, under hospitals, under mosques, inside schools, even inside UN facilities. And so our job is made much more difficult, but we can't allow Hamas to have immunity, because if they have immunity, they will continue to attack and continue to brutalize and massacre our people.
But do you accept that ratio, that you're killing about 2 civilians for every Hamas fighter you kill?
So I can't refer specifically to those numbers. I can say the following. If that is the ratio, that compares very well, very favorably with ratios of similar conflicts against a terrorist group in an urban situation, as you had in places like Mosul and Fallujah. Yeah. That is a good ratio, but once again, I can't confirm it.
But if that's the rate, you could sleep at night with that ratio existing.
I can sleep at night knowing that anything that is just a Band-Aid solution that leaves Hamas in power will create more bloodshed and more killing in the future. We've started this job. Well, we didn't start it, they started it. But this war has been started, and we will finish it with the end of Hamas. Anything else is just a recipe for further conflict down the line.
There's some reports over the last couple of days, Mark Regev, that Israeli intelligence did have some knowledge of the attack. They even had meetings about the prospects of the attack on October 7th. They didn't warn the people who are having the music festival in that area. Can you confirm that there was intelligence knowledge, intelligence awareness of the likelihood of an October 7th attack?
it's clear that there were in some parts of the system and for all sorts of reasons, it didn't go up. It didn't go up to senior commanders. It didn't go up to political decision makers. And we have to, when this is over, we have to have a thorough investigation. I mean, Israelis, as a country, we're always very proud of our intelligence services, which are good. But here there was a cock-up. Somehow, Hamas took us by surprise on October 7th. And in so doing, they massacred our people. What was it? 1,200 killed on the day and another 240 abducted and taken hostage to Gaza. And that is unacceptable. We paid in blood for our mistake. And when this is over, we have to have a thorough investigation. We've got a good system in Israel of checks and balances, of independent inquiries. We did so after we were surprised in 1973. We had what you would call in Britain a royal commission, and people had to resign, and it went all the way up to the political level as well. So I expect the same sort of thing to happen now, because we have to have lessons learned. We can't accept the failure of October 7th.
Meanwhile, as it stands, the level of bombardment in the south as well as the north is going to continue.
We will continue until we defeat and destroy Hamas. And as you know, there have been very complex fighting both in the south and in the north, close quarter fighting between our forces and Hamas. And we've made a maximum effort and continue to make a maximum effort to see civilians move out of harm's way. And that's why we've designated these special safe zones in the south for civilians to move to, because we don't want to see them caught up in the crossfire.
But even if they survive, Mark Regev, you're radicalizing them. That's the other point in this. You talk about the elimination of Hamas, and people understand. I think people completely understand. 1,200 dead, you've got to do something. Everyone understands that. But there is this practical notion. There's a moral position that you're killing civilians as you do it. And there's the strategic argument that for every time you drop a bomb, for every time someone dies who shouldn't die, you're radicalizing people. You're not eliminating Hamas. You might get some of their leaders, but you're fostering an ideology that's going to come back and hurt you for years and decades to come. That's the fear. That's the strategic fear here.
So I'll deal with both parts of your question. On the moral side, we're doing the moral thing, and that is making a maximum effort in a complex combat situation to avoid seeing civilians caught up in the crossfire. Our goal is zero civilian casualties. That is very difficult, but that's what we're striving for. We don't want to see a single civilian caught up in the crossfire. Obviously, it's very, very difficult. On the larger issue, when the German chancellor was here, visiting Israel, he talked about Hamas being the new Nazis. So to use that comparison, Berlin was destroyed at the Second World War, and the truth is the Germans blamed Hitler in the end, and not the Allies. And I think Gazans are not stupid. They understand that this war was launched by Hamas. They understand that Israel was responding to Hamas's atrocity. They even know that more recently Hamas broke off the humanitarian pause in the fighting because they refused to deliver more hostages. And though, I know for all sorts of historical reasons, there's not a lot of love for Israel in Gaza, but because the people of Gaza can see what is happening, they know that this destruction, this displacement, all the tragedy has come from Hamas's decisions. And when this is over, I think you will see, I don't think I know, you will see lots of pent-up Gaza, and you will see a of anger and Hamas path of extremism.
We're just losing you, Mark. But sorry, Mark, we just lost you. But I think we understand the point you're making. The argument you've made there, and we just lost you because you just sort of blipped out. But Mark Regev saying there that he's confident, he knows that when this is over, the blame will not be placed on Israel. The blame will be placed on Hamas. There won't be radicalization. And he also said a ratio of 2 civilians to 1 Hamas person was a good ratio and an example of a moral position taken by Israel there. Mark Regev, who is a senior advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu.